meeting is being recorded. Uh, Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Raksha. Hi.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, so ma'am, I think we can start and we can go ahead with the seminar.
Yeah.
So before that, I'd really like to thank Remedy International for hosting a very fantastic session as usual. So before we begin, I'd love to introduce our speaker. It gives me a great pleasure to introduce the speaker for today, Dr. Veenu. She is an accomplished interventional cardiologist with an MBBS, DNB, and DM as credits to her. And also, she has an extra feather in her cap being an ECMO provider. She currently serves as a consultant interventional cardiologist, a heart failure specialist, and also an ECMO specialist with Medita Healthcare, and also a lot of patient care in multiple hospitals. She has over 10 years of clinical experience and she brings to the table a wealth of expertise in advanced cardiac care and cardiopulmonary support. So, today we will be discussing, and ma'am will be talking about a topic that lies at the intersection of physiology, diagnostics, and clinical decision making. It is cardiopulmonary exercise testing. So, please join me in welcoming Dr. Veenu, ma'am. And with that, let's give the mic to her and go on and move ahead with the presentation. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raksha. So I'll start sharing the slide.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you see the slides?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's
Oh,
very well seen.
yeah. Good evening, everyone. So today is the third of the sports cardiology series. So I thought I'll be talking about this cardiopulmonary exercise testing and its application. So basically, a short recap for those who have not attended the previous two, in order for you to just understand what we are talking about. So, as sports cardiologists, what is our role? Basically, differentiating exercise induced cardiac remodeling from that of cardiovascular pathology. Second is taking care of symptomatic competitive athletes as well as highly active people and finding out what type of pathology they have, and also to give them exercise prescription by the end of the day as to whether they can go ahead or not. So we know that exercise per se is going to increase the VO2 max, increases stroke volume and the cardiac output. It increases end diastolic volume, and also we have the LV wall which is enlarged. Resting heart rate will go down, heart rate variability will increase. So we know that there are different types of activity. One is the endurance training, the other is the strength training. So normally endurance training has much more cardiac remodeling when compared to that of strength training. So when we look at people who come with endurance training, we are looking at people who have dilated and also thickened LV and RV, and there can be biatrial enlargement also in them, because of which they are also prone for some atrial arrhythmias like atrial fibrillation. Whereas strength training only causes mild left ventricular hypertrophy and some diastolic dysfunction. So these are some changes. So we need to keep in mind when we are evaluating a athlete. Before we go ahead with evaluation, we should have a clear idea of what level of activity they do. And not all athletes are going to have changes in the heart. It is also related to predisposition with respect to age, sex, as well as their genetic profiling, and also the race. There are so many things that come into account as to why somebody develops more cardiac remodeling when another person doesn't have any remodeling at all for the same level of activity. And we should also have an idea of each activity, how much dynamic component and how much static component is there. So when we look at the graph here, whoever is has highest dynamic as well as static component, that is this box here, which includes canoeing, kayaking, boxing, then rowing, triathlons. So these are the people who are going to have maximum cardiac remodeling. Some ECG changes which will be normally seen in an athlete, like they can have sinus bradycardia or even a first degree AV block, Venki back type, and they may have T inversions in V1 to V3, which is a juvenile persistent pattern, and early repolarization changes can be there in even normal athletes. So then we were looking at how to prevent sudden cardiac death in athletes. That we were looking at pre-participation screening program. So to prevent sudden cardiac death, so only after the pre-participation we will license them to go for competitive sports or bring in some modification in the exercise or disease-related intervention. So basically, recommendation for professional athletes based on their personal history, physical examination, and also ECG. So, when we say young athletes, we are going to have a questionnaire by which we are going to analyze their personal family history, then an ECG and a physical examination. Echo is plus minus because it still doesn't give a complete picture whether we have to have echo for every single athlete as a pre participation screening. And further investigation is based on what symptomatology the athlete is going to come to us with. The master athletes, that is any athlete beyond 35 years, there should be a 10-year stratification. Any of the scores we can use because they are going to have more of atherosclerotic disease. So there, all this TMT, CPET, and CTCAG, all these come into thing. So, what is the role of exercise ECG? Basically, for us to diagnose coronary artery disease, find out if they have blood pressure increase with exercise and or decrease with exercise, any exercise induced arrhythmias. So, what do we mean by exercise induced arrhythmias? So, basically, many of them can have ventricular arrhythmias related to exercise, which are very dangerous, and some of them can also have supraventricular arrhythmias related to exercise. So, it is better to put them on the treadmill to know what exactly is happening to these people, and then evaluate symptoms during a physical activity and functional capacity. So, with this, we will come to today's topic. So, cardiopulmonary exercise testing. So, basically, it is an integrated test wherein we are looking at first is cardiac because there will be an ECG which will be continuously running, and pulmonary. So they are going to be connected to a spirometer, which is going to keep measuring how much oxygen intake is there, how much carbon dioxide is coming out, what is their tidal volume, and what is their respiratory capacity that is going on throughout the exercise. Then they should have a good vascular system. One is the coronary arteries we are talking about with respect to the heart, and also the rest of the vascular tree has to be normal so that they get blood supply to the different parts of the body in order for the oxygen to be taken in at the peripheries. And the musculoskeletal system has to also be normal. Somebody with a type of myopathy may not be able to perform as much as a person who don't have a myopathy. So all these systems can be tested at one go in a cardiopulmonary exercise test. And it is a unique test. It couples both gas exchange measurement, that is uptake of oxygen VO2, which we can measure up to the max VO2, and carbon dioxide that is exhaled, that is VCO2, with traditional exercise testing parameters. Normally, in any exercise test that we do, we will definitely look at the ECG and the blood pressure. Saturation, of course, plus minus depending on exercise test, but here everything is integrated into one. So, usually used in non clinical settings in athletes, wherein they will only want to optimize their training so that they can maximize what output they are going to give. So, based on the VO2 max, they want to increase their VO2 max. There are so many modifications that athletes can do based on the CPET. But in the clinical setting, we are going to be using it for certain indications, which I will be coming to. So CPET in clinical practice is what we are looking at, because we are not looking at the performance level of the athletes. So when do we use a CPET in clinical practice for an athlete? First and foremost, if they have dyspnea of unknown etiology. Let's say there is somebody who's been maybe rowing for so many kilometers or so much time period every day, and suddenly develops dyspnea at the same level of activity. Then we need to find out what is the reason for dyspnea, of course coupled with the rest of the basic evaluation of whatever is necessary. Basically, CPET will give us a clear idea whether we are dealing with a cardiac problem or we are dealing with a respiratory problem, because everything in a way can cause dyspnea. Then evaluation of exercise tolerance. So let's say there is a person who we want to put through after maybe some intervention, or they have some cardiac pathology. In all those cases, we will be able to clearly tell this much of exercise tolerance is there, and it is not a worry. So let's say we are sending somebody to the Himalayas. We want to stress them to this level and see if they can tolerate exercise to that level. That can be done with the CPET. Prognosis and risk stratification. If somebody has a coronary anomaly with uh, let's say the anomalous coronary is going in between the great arteries, that is the aorta and the pulmonary artery. In those cases, when they have when they do exercise exertion, they because of the increase in cardiac output and the aorta dilating, the coronary artery will get compressed. There will be ischemic changes on the CPET, and when the ischemic changes are found out, at least we can tell them that they are not fit for exercise, which is more than moderate to high intensity, and unless they are operated or the anomaly is corrected. So these type of prognostication can be done only with the CPET. If somebody had a dilated cardiomyopathy and they have improved with respect to ejection fraction, we can put them on a CPET to see if they can go for further exercise that they want to do. Or if some person had myocarditis, and once all the inflammation has settled and cardiac MRI is not showing any fibrosis anywhere, we can put them through CPET to see if they develop any arrhythmias, any other issues, and then give them a exercise prescription. Then we can look at response to therapeutic intervention. So if somebody develops an arrhythmia on exercise, and we are able to do a RF ablation or some other form of correction for the arrhythmia, we can put them back on the CPET to see if it recurs. And even in patients who have pulmonary disease, we can find out based on whatever intervention we have given. Let's say there was a person with bronchial asthma. We have given them some form of inhalers and a lot of modifying drugs in order to reduce the inflammation, and then we can put them again on CPET to see if there is any restriction or any obstruction pattern that is seen in the person with exercise. So, normal exercise physiology, we know cardiac output increases by increasing stroke volume initially, and later on, even the heart rate increases. We know cardiac output is the product of stroke volume and heart rate. So, when both of them increase, cardiac output increases. So, there should be enough um, reserve in the heart to increase the cardiac output in athletes in order for them to perform in a certain way. So, over a period of time, most athletes will have changes in such a way that they are able to improve their cardiac output to a large extent when compared to normal people, in order to gain that extra momentum or extra endurance. So, similarly, we have to look at the oxygen extraction. So, oxygen extraction is going to depend on the amount of oxygen in the blood. So, that depends on the hemoglobin. So, if somebody has anemia, they may not be able to perform the same way as a person without anemia, because the amount of oxygen carried in the blood of a person without anemia is going to be much higher. So that way they will be able to perform better. So for us, if we want the person to perform better, we have to correct the anemia first in order to improve the oxygen content of the blood. Next is heart. So everything has to go hand in hand. First and foremost, heart has to improve the cardiac output. Lungs have to adequately oxygenate. So let's say in three-fourth of a second is where the blood flow goes through the lungs. The entire lung vasculature takes around three-fourth of a second. So in that, one-fourth of the second is when there is time for gas exchange. So in that one-fourth of a second, everything has to get done in order to. So if there is some pathology with the membrane of the lung uh, alveoli, in that case, the gas exchange is going to become slower. As the gas exchange becomes slower, naturally the oxygen delivery is going to be less and performance is going to drop. So all this has to go hand in hand. So vascular supply has to be there, and there will be a lot of changes in the mitochondria. So they have to utilize the oxygen in a better way. So aerobic metabolism has to improve for the athlete to perform better. If there is more of glycolysis and lactic acid production, then the performance drops. So that way, even the mitochondria has to become efficient. So the type of sport decides whether there is more of anaerobic or more of aerobic metabolism. So most of the dynamic sports, even the endurance ones, have more of aerobic activity, whereas the static sports, it comes in bursts. So maybe weightlifting, it comes in bursts. So those are the ones which have more of anaerobic activity. So here is the physiological parameters which we will be looking at when we look at an untrained individual and an athlete. So heart rate, when we look at, it increases in both. Though the resting heart rate in an athlete will be low, but heart rate increases with activity. Stroke volume increases in both, but the athlete will be able to increase the stroke volume much more than the untrained individual. So once the stroke volume and heart rate increases, cardiac output increases. As the stroke volume increases much further, the athlete cardiac output is going to be much higher than an untrained individual. Blood pressure also increases in an athlete much more than that of a untrained individual. The saturation remains the same, or it can decrease to some extent, but generally the decrease is not more than 4 to 5%. When we look at VO2, definitely the VO2 max is going to be much higher in an athlete when compared to that of an untrained individual. So oxygen pulse is the VO2 divided by the heart rate. So we expect in an athlete the VO2 to increase much more than that of the heart rate. So oxygen pulse constantly keeps increasing in an athlete much more than that of an untrained individual. The breathing reserve reduces. So, what are the different protocols we look at? So, there can be either treadmills or cycle ergometer. So, what is the difference? Treadmill, you can't have a ramp protocol, like you can't keep increasing the inclination as well as the speed constantly. So, that way, treadmill can only be a graded or an incremental exercise load, whereas a cycle ergometer can be a ramp protocol, that is a constant increase in the level of activity, the resistance in the cycle. Just give me 1 minute. I'll just see if it's closed. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. So the cycle ergometer that way can have a RAM protocol. The other aspect is treadmill measurement of blood pressure is going to be quite difficult when it is on the treadmill. But cycle ergometer, there is not much of movement with respect to the hand. So the blood pressure measurement is more accurate in a cycle ergometer. Then when we look at the protocols, there are three types of protocol. One is a RAM protocol, when it just constantly you keep increasing the load on the individual. Second one is the incremental or the graded one, wherein, like in the treadmill or the Bruce protocol that we normally do in a treadmill test, wherein it is graded. In the first 3 minutes, you have a certain grade, then you keep increasing. The third one is a customized one. Let's say I do a treadmill for one of the patient, and despite me doing the treadmill, the patient doesn't have any symptoms during the treadmill, but has symptoms while doing their activity. So in those cases, we can do the same activity that they do. Let's say they do some burpees, they do some mountain climbing. So whatever they do, we can make them do, and also check for the symptoms as they do those tests. So this is a cycle ergometer, just pictures for representation. And this is a treadmill CPET that is going on. So we can see that they are wearing a mask which will be connected to a spirometer which will keeps measuring, and along with that the ECG is also connected, and we keep looking at their exercise tolerance. They will have a saturation probe, everything connected, so that we get the clear cut idea. So when we look at continuous RAM protocol, the work keeps increasing as we see along the y-axis, and the time. And when we look at normal individuals, as the time goes further, the workload doesn't increase. But in athletes, the workload increases significantly because they are well trained. When we look at incremental protocol, it is this way. So it will be small increases in the work. So initially there is a plateau and then it keeps increasing. So normally, whenever we do a treadmill test, most of the times we want to do a treadmill test as a equal procedure for everybody. Let's say there is somebody who has come from Coorg or Chikmagalur or any of those areas which have a lot of steep incline. So those patients, they come with symptoms of angina, let's say. So we put them to a treadmill test, wherein we use the normal Bruce protocol, which is an incremental protocol. You can see that there is a 10% increase in the inclination with each stage. But this will never test a person who is walking in an incline which is much, much higher than this. So that way we will give a negative treadmill, but the person already has a coronary artery disease which is undetected. So that way, always, whatever protocol we use, we have to be sure that we are testing the correct type of activity that the person is doing. So that way, this Bruce and modified Bruce, all this may not test a athlete. For athlete, there are different other protocols like the modified Strand protocol, wherein they start off at a much higher level and the increments may be short, but they reach 16 METs or 18 METs much faster than the Bruce protocol, which we will stop at 10 METs, which may not check much. So we have to test the athlete up to their level of capacity in order to be sure that we have done the right thing. So when do we stop the test? If there normally, if there is no issues with the cardiopulmonary system, we are stopping only when there is muscle fatigue. So usually, like a RAM protocol, they will reach muscle fatigue by around 10 to 15 minutes. So that is the time period when the CPET will be done. Otherwise, if they develop cardiopulmonary symptoms which are limiting, and then we stop the test and we diagnose what is the actual problem with the cardiac system or the pulmonary system. ECG changes which are very significant, we stop the test, or a blood pressure rise beyond 210 in a male or 190 in a female. Systolic, we stop, or diastolic much more than 114 or around 120, we stop. Or a drop in pressure is definitely significant, because it means to say they have either an tight aortic stenosis or so many other problems which can drop, severe LV dysfunction. Those aspects we have to stop the treadmill. And if the saturation drops to more than 5% or more, we need to stop the test. So these are the aspects that we will be looking at, the two guidelines that I have put. So maximum heart rate, which we normally accept, is 85% of target heart rate, that is 220 minus the age. And there should be heart rate increment per metabolic equivalent, that is 3.5 ml per kg per minute of VO2. There should be a rise of 10 heart rate. When we look at heart rate recovery, greater than 12 beats per minute recovery in 1 minute, beyond 1 minute, or cool down period. That is what we consider as significant. Then, when we look at blood pressure, as I already told, absolute systolic blood pressure 210 for males and 190 for females, or any drop in pressure, we have to take it significantly. Saturation, if the saturation at rest was, let's say, greater than 95%, not more than 5% decrease, we should accept. Then, when we look at VO2 max, normally uh, it should be more than 85% of predicted according to the ATS, but AHA says more than 100% or equal to 100% of what is predicted is what we expect. O2 pulse again should continuously keep rising or plateauing, and the breathing reserve also should be more than 20%. So these are few aspects that we will be looking at when we do a test. So the Fick's equation will tell us completely what we need to look at. So when we say VO2 max is equal to cardiac output into the oxygen content of the blood. So cardiac output, we are looking at heart rate, stroke volume, and this oxygen content depends on the hemoglobin and how much of oxygen is there, and also the lung issues, whether there is hypoxemia. So everything gets checked in one test. So the three types of pulmonary limitations, I told you about the cardiac limitations that can happen. One is coronary artery disease and some LV dysfunction, diastolic dysfunction. There are so many things that can be picked up. In pulmonary exercise limitation, one is a ventilatory mechanical. That is, if somebody has already interstitial lung disease, chest wall restriction, or some neurological problems, they will have lower predictive values. Then, if they have lung, let's say, dead space increase, so those people will also have reduced predictive ventilatory capacity. And if there is diffusion related problems, again, so diffusion related problems, one is the membrane issues are there, either an ILD or an emphysema may be there, or it may be high altitude, wherein the partial pressure of oxygen itself is low, so there is hypoxia. So this is how a COPD or a restrictive pattern will look like. So you can see the red is the respiratory rate. So in a COPD, initially there is some increase in the tidal volume, and then respiratory rate increases much more, and the tidal volume drops. But in a restrictive ILD or so, there is no increase in the tidal volume at all. It remains the same, but respiratory rate increases phenomenally. So, based on these patterns, we know what exactly is going wrong with the um, uh, person. So, to conclude, CPET basically provides a window to understand exercise physiology much more clearly and where the problem is, whether it is with the lungs, heart, or the external aspect, and to diagnose exercise induced symptoms in athletes. And it has to be tailored, so depending on the level of activity of the athlete, we have to test them to that level before we say that CPET is negative or positive. And most of the times, we as cardiologists, we use CPET more in very ill patients, like the ones who are going for heart transplant or so, for us to find out what is a VO2 max, because we have the VO2 max cutoff of 14 ml per kg per minute for us to say somebody is has to go for a heart transplant, which is a criteria. So that way, most of us use it more in the sick patients, but routinely using them in athletes has to become the way of analyzing when there is a need, or when we want to assess what exactly is the reason for the symptoms during their exercise. Thank you.
Hello, madam.
Hello, sir.
Nice, madam. Last class I missed actually.
Okay, sir.
Uh,
I just gave a small recap, sir.
it was nice, madam. So in athlete, you mean to say you will keep say, settings differently, madam, for the to identify the underlying cardiac disease in the
Yes, sir.
in the
Same treadmill protocol
will
cannot
not
be
be identified.
tailored for everybody, sir.
Uh-huh.
It has to be changed according to the athlete or their activity. That is what I was telling about Coorg patients. They will just do the treadmill very easily. Or
Mm-hmm.
somebody who is used to incline, somebody who's come from northeast or from Himalayan region. For them, their fitness will be much, much higher than the regular Bruce protocol. So if we are just putting them through some basic protocol, they will just pass through the test and not develop any symptoms or ECG changes. And we will consider them as normal. But it is not so. It has to be tailored to each one's level of endurance and activity.
In normal person, how much target you reach heart rate and BP with respect to athletes, madam? What is the heart rate you
No,
expect?
normal people, that is what, sir. If their activity, even normal people, sometimes they will have a much higher activity.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on their activity, we can tailor the test. So, generally for normal people, 85% target heart rate, and depending on their age, let's say if it is somebody less than 70 years, 10 metabolic equivalent, we'll say, or if more than that, even 7 metabolic equivalent we can accept, telling they have done their level of activity and it is fine. But athletes is a totally different level. So once we say it is athlete, they are supposed to reach, especially those who are doing high intensity activity or competitive level athletes, they have to really push them through a lot of endurance. So for that, we have to test them at much higher level than what we normally do for normal people.
What I mean to say, madam, if the person having usually heart rate around 100, so up to
Hmm.
85 minutes, up to 185 rate you will target there. For
Yeah,
athlete to
220
50,
minus
uh,
age. Athlete also we can do the same thing,
uh,
but they should have also reached the level of workload which they normally do.
use athlete means heart rate will be around 50. Imagine 50, madam.
Yeah,
So
50.
even
So they have
85.
to reach, yeah, 85% of target heart rate, or we
So
can go much higher also for them. Like
okay,
100% of target heart rate also we can go.
okay. So.
Depending, not just the target heart rate, their load also they have to reach.
Mm-hmm.
How much of workload they want to do. Like they may be doing 16 metabolic equivalents or 20 metabolic equivalents. So based on that, we have to make them do.
So the same thing holds good for even regular gym people who are doing
Yes,
regular
sir.
this exercise.
Yes,
Same.
yeah, yes.
Okay.
Because then we should be able to tailor to what level of gymming they are doing. So based on that, we have to do it, sir. And generally, now what they say is, if we are not wanting to put them so much through CPET, we think it is coronary, then get a CT coronary angiogram rather than, saying it is negative. Unless we get the symptoms that they are getting on exercise, on the treadmill or cycle, um, which is not complete. So once we get the symptoms and it is all normal, then we can say nothing much to worry. Otherwise, better for us to evaluate till they get the symptoms.
So instead of this treadmill, they can directly go for CT coronary angiogram and
If it is
assess
cardiac, sir. If
if
it
it is
is cardiac. If it is
respiratory.
respiratory, again, we'll have to
Again, it
do
will
the
miss.
CPET
Yes,
to
madam.
see. Yeah,
Got it, madam.
yeah.
Correct.
Or we have to put them to some other form of spirometry with exercise in order to diagnose respiratory issues. So that way, CPET only thing is it comprehensively gives us an idea whether they're going to have
Cardiopulmonary,
cardiac issue, pulmonary issue,
pulmonary issues.
whatever it is, it clarifies for us.
Nice, man. It was interesting. Last class I missed it actually. I'll go through the videos.
It's
I not seen the videos. I'll
okay,
see
sir.
those videos. Nice, madam.
And we don't have CPET in Mysore, sir, as of
Uh,
now.
mm-hmm.
Bangalore has many centers which have CPET, but most of the times CPET even in Bangalore is in those cardiac centers which do heart transplant or lung transplant, because most of it is done for those sick patients. basically to risk stratify and put them in the transplant list. So athletic wise, it is very less. Where,
Thank you, madam. It was very nice.
okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
I think Shravya or hello.
No more questions, I think, sir.
Hello.
Nothing else is there in the chat box.
Hello.
Yeah, Shravya. No questions, I think. So,
I don't think there is questions, madam. Okay, ma'am.
so we can end the session, no,
Okay,
sir?
okay.
Okay.
Madam,
On
Somebody,
behalf of Remedy International,
somebody
we
is asking a
extend our
question.
heartfelt thanks to Dr. Veenu for sharing such a valuable insight to all the participants also. Thank you for joining.
There is a question in the chat
Question.
box. Can you explain CPET protocol in brief? So basically, initially, as soon as the patient comes, they will actually do a FEV1. So with a spirometer, they will do a FEV1 because we want to know the maximum ventilatory parameter of the patient. That will be FEV1 into 40. So after they have done the FEV1, then in initial baseline parameters, they will connect the ECG. Then they will connect to the spirometer. So they will get all the baseline parameters of what the tidal volume is, what is their VO2 at rest, VCO2 at rest, and the ECG. Everything will be seen. So after that, the exercise is started. Depending on whether it is a cycle ergometer where you can try a RAM protocol or a treadmill, wherein any of these protocols we will start off with. So, whichever based on the protocol, it may be a 3 minute or a 1 minute or a 2 minute one, wherein the exercise protocol keeps going according to the set pattern. So, if it is ramp, it is going to continuously increase the resistance till the time when the athlete is unable to do any further. So generally, when the mask is put, the nose is not clipped. Otherwise, if a little more primitive forms, they will clip the nose so that all breathing happens only through the mouth. Both expiration and inspiration happens through the mouth, so the calculation is accurate. So once just before a few seconds of them stopping is when they calculate the VO2 max. That will be around 15 to 30 seconds before they stop the peak exercise. That is when they calculate the VO2 max. And based on all this, finally they will go through the recovery phase, and then the report based on what it comes, we will be giving it. Is it possible to detect peripheral vascular insufficiency of some kind? Yes, we do exercise and we do a ankle brachial index for peripheral vascular disease. So we make them go through the exercise till they develop symptoms of claudication in the lower limb, and that time we will do an ankle brachial index and find out how significant the problem is. Their ankle brachial index at baseline will be normal, but once they have gone through the exercise, we will be able to detect that they have vascular insufficiency. So those are the two questions in the chat box which I have answered.